perfect marketing strategy is a bold statement, I know. Is there really one marketing strategy that can be perfect for B2B, B2C, across finance, healthcare, beauty, between brands spending thousands of dollars a year and millions of dollars a year? Does the perfect marketing strategy really exist? Well, I've been in digital marketing for 21 years now, and from working on tiny one-man band businesses to today Exposure Ninja, working on multi-billion-dollar global brands and buying our own $10 million company and implementing our marketing strategies there. And I can tell you the perfect marketing strategy doesn't look exactly the same for each business, but the best marketing strategies do rhyme, in that there are some tried and tested core components that are consistent across the best marketing strategies, and that's what we're going to cover today. And there are 6 of them. But first, what is a perfect marketing strategy? Well, a marketing strategy, of course, is just your plan to get more customers. And in our opinion, the perfect marketing strategy should do 4 things. Firstly, it should align the channels that you're working across, the messaging that you're using, and the budget that you have to deploy. And all of these should be aligned around a single commercial goal. Secondly, it should drive qualified demand. Too often we see marketing departments focused on vanity metrics, and that's not what this is about. Thirdly, the perfect marketing strategy should actually compound results over time. So built into your strategy should be mechanisms to improve performance as you learn. I'm going to give you an example of this in just a minute. Fourth and finally, if it's the perfect strategy, it should be able to change quickly as business, markets, or platforms shift. And if there's one thing that we're all learning at the moment, it's that things can change. Okay, so let me give you an example of one of our clients and what their perfect strategy look like. So this client is in commercial energy consultancy. They work with businesses to help them cut their energy bills and choose more renewable solutions. Now remember those 4 components we spoke about. We first started with a single goal that we could align all of the channel, message, and budget decisions around. For this business, that single goal was qualified leads. They have a sales team and they wanted to drive a consistent stream of qualified leads to that sales team. Happy days. We can build a marketing strategy around that, and it's very clear and everybody is in agreement that that is a good thing for the business. The second component was driving qualified demand. Now, in order to make sure that the leads coming to the business were qualified, we first needed to re-engineer the website, improve the messaging and positioning and branding to make sure that the people who were landing on the website, if they were qualified, they reached out, but they understood what they were reaching out about. Otherwise, it would just waste the sales team's time. We also identified the traffic channels that were going to generate the most qualified traffic. In this case, it was SEO, paid search, and content marketing. Now, we were working from a low base. The website had generated 0 leads before we came along, but we were able to generate over 600 leads in the first year because we got these things right. The third element of this marketing strategy was the ability to compound results over time. Those 3 marketing channels that we chose to prioritize for this client, SEO, content, and paid search, would often be siloed in many businesses or marketing agencies. And sometimes you'd have a marketing agency that just does one of those channels. The trouble with siloing each of these is that any learnings that you get in one area don't get applied in the other areas. Whereas what we did is link those areas very closely together so that something that we learned about search demand from PPC, for example, we could then feed back to the SEO and the content teams so they could evolve their strategy as well. And this led to an almost doubling of organic traffic year on year. Finally, the strategy that we designed had a built-in review cadence of every quarter, which allowed us to adapt as things changed. And in this business, things did change. We needed to pivot during the first year and focus more of our attention on one particular channel at the expense of some of the others in order to drive the growth. So if that's what the perfect marketing strategy looks like, how do you go about building it? Well, there are 6 steps to follow, and we're going to go through each of them. First is to choose that ruthlessly clear business goal. We like to have one very clear commercial goal that nobody in the organization would argue with. In an ideal world, this would be something that we have full control over, like revenue. Otherwise, it might be leads, it might be pipeline efficiency. But the very worst targets to build a marketing strategy around are those fluffy, easy to manipulate numbers like traffic or brand visibility, or share of voice. Those might be building blocks of the main goal, but they shouldn't be the main goal. Otherwise, you end up with all sorts of weird incentives and a strategy designed to move some sort of needle which actually has nothing to do with the business growth. Company leadership then takes a look at the marketing department over here playing this weird little game with an odd outcome and says, "Why are you guys doing any of that? None of that stuff matters," and throws it all in the bin. So if you're targeting something that means something to everyone in the organization, like revenue or like qualified leads, you're on the same page and it's easier to get buy-in for what you're doing. One example I'm going to mention later on is one of our fintech clients. This business came to us with a very clear goal: increase our revenue. We were able to increase their revenue 77% in a year because they gave us a revenue target and we could work backwards from that. If they'd given us an ambient target like increase our share of voice or increase our impression share, yeah, we could have influenced that, but it might not have had any impact on their revenue. The next component of your perfect marketing strategy is to identify the key constraint that you need to overcome. In our experience, a lot of companies actually have one key growth constraint. Now, there might be multiple, but there's typically one main bottleneck that's preventing them from getting the growth they really need. And usually this is in one of four areas. It might be a demand constraint where not enough people are aware that this business exists or want the thing that this business is offering. Imagine a great shop, but it's tucked way beyond the high street. Nobody can even find it. It doesn't really matter what that business does. Unless people come past the shop, they're not going to sell anything. The next type of constraint can be a conversion constraint. Your website, your store, your social pages or whatever is getting enough traffic to it, but it's not turning that traffic into leads or sales, meaning that driving more traffic only makes a really small improvement to your overall growth. Going back to our store analogy, you might have a shop on the high street that's really great, but the windows are all blacked out and the door's sticky, so no one can even get in. The third type of constraint is a sales constraint. So you might have lots of traffic, you might have a website that's driving leads, but those leads just aren't turning into sales. Sometimes this is just purely a sales problem, but often there's actually something that can be done with marketing, either before the leads become a lead or during that sales process, where we as marketers can help support the sales team to turn those people into customers. Going back to our store analogy, you might have a great shop on the high street, loads of people coming in, loads of demand for what you do, but the checkout assistants are completely disinterested and do a horrible job of closing the customers. The fourth constraint can be a retention constraint, i.e. you're getting people in, you're selling them, but they're not staying a customer or a client long enough for you to extract maximum value. One example of a client that we've helped with this constraint using marketing is a business that offers accreditations and certifications. We got them loads of traffic, we got them loads of leads, their sales team turned those into loads of customers, but those customers weren't renewing at the end of their first and second years. So yes, this was a retention issue for the sales team, but we could also support that through marketing. And how we did this is by generating automated sequences that when someone was coming up for renewal, they would get a series of emails explaining the benefit of renewal. But they'd also start to see adverts on Meta platforms and Google Display Network explaining why they should renew and showing case studies of other firms that had renewed. This meant that when the sales team started having those conversations with those renewal clients, they weren't having to re-explain what the business did because that cohort of people had already seen a whole bunch of adverts and marketing reminding them why they signed up in the first place. So you'll probably want to build in a fix for your primary constraint into your marketing strategy. This can often unlock the results that really you should have been generating before but hadn't because there was this bottleneck in the system. Going back to our fintech client example, their main constraint was just demand constraint. Prior to working with us, their website had only been generating them 8 marketing qualified leads per month, so it was essentially dead. And because it was dead, they didn't have proof of concept, they couldn't scale. So we built out and implemented a strategy for them that addressed this demand constraint. We first made sure that the website was ready to convert, and we built out a content strategy that targets some really high commercial intent phrases. They were pretty low competition, but very high commercial intent, very specific phrases, which got them really nice visibility in front of the perfect customer for them. We designed them a content framework that boosted their authority, and we got them coverage in lots of places online to get in front of their target customer. Because remember, we needed to drive more demand. This went really well. By month 9, we'd already exceeded our annual lead target, and we'd successfully showed the business and their backers that there was clear demand for this product and that the proof of concept was there. They then got acquired in late 2025, in part because they could show the acquirer that there was real demand for what they offered and that they had really strong organic performance. Okay, step number 3 is to design a channel mix that matches your target audience. Because the perfect digital marketing strategy should include different marketing channels, not based on what you think would be coolest to do or what your competitors are doing, but where your target audience is spending the most time and where you get the highest quality traffic. Now, most businesses typically have an audience that falls into one of two categories. They either have a very search-focused audience, which might be people that know that they've got a problem or know that they're looking for what they need. I always use the example of a locksmith here. If you need a locksmith, you're going straight onto Google, or you're asking ChatGPT, or you're doing something search-focused. You're not just opening Instagram and hoping that you see an ad for a locksmith, right? But the other type of buyer profile that you might have is a much more complex, dare I say, B2B-ish journey, which might involve multiple touch points and an extended period of education. If your audience matches this profile, it might be all about getting in front of these people repeatedly through content, through email, through digital PR, being constantly seen and getting on their radar. So when they're ready to make a purchase, they're thinking of you. So I'll give you an example of one of our US mortgage clients. So when they came to us, their website was really performing pretty poorly, and they didn't really know where they should be marketing it. So what we did first is remove that conversion constraint by fixing the website. In order to do that though, we actually mapped out their target audience, and we identified 4 buyer personas based on recordings and conversations that their sales team had had with real customers. We listened to and read those recordings, and we categorized these customers into these 4 buyer personas. From there, we could identify what messages were likely to resonate with them, what next steps they would like to take, and the sort of content topics that we need to talk about. But we could also map out the ideal customer journey. So for some of these segments, for example, they were searching really particular things on Google, and we knew that we had to get in front of that person with a Google ad driving to a very specific landing page, because they knew exactly what they wanted, and we couldn't just send them to a generic website page. For other personas though, they didn't really know what they were looking for, or even that this solution exists. So for that type of persona, it was more about targeting them on meta ads, for example, and getting in front of them to introduce this new mortgage product as a concept. For all of these personas, we designed specific automated follow-up sequences via email. So once they came in as leads, we were consistently following up with them and educating them. We could make those messages really tailored because we had those 4 distinct personas and we knew what their motivations and drivers were. This business really didn't suit just throwing everyone into the same bucket and sending them all out a generic message. And by the way, if you're interested in working with Exposure Ninja, or interested to see what type of agency goes out and buys $10 million companies and implements its own marketing strategies on those companies, well, let us take a look at your business and your brand and see what we would do to grow it as if it was our own. You can do this via the free website and digital marketing review. We'll analyze your website based on the marketing goals that you give us. We'll show you what we would do to improve and grow the volume of leads and sales that you're generating over time. In fact, we'll even research your competitors and turn all of this into a video that we'll send to you. Usually we like to have a phone call first just to ask you any additional questions to make sure we're focusing our attention in the right area. And this service is completely free of charge. Not everybody is eligible for this though, so you do need to request this free digital marketing review at exposureninja.com/review. And by the way, some of the world's biggest brands have requested this and give us feedback that it is super useful. So don't be scared. What's the worst that could happen? Head over to exposureninja.com/review to request your review today. Okay, fourth stage in our perfect marketing strategy is to identify a dominant competitive advantage. Increasingly in the messy, AI cluttered world that we are marketing in, having one dominant strategic advantage can really make you stand out. Now, of course, I know, your business is better in every way than all of your competitors. But if you had to pick one particular area to laser focus in your marketing, what would that be? I like to think of this as your signature weapon. This is the thing that you would take into battle knowing that you'd beat anybody that you came up against, because this thing is so good and it's so attractive to your perfect customer. And this is more important than ever because not only does most content today feel interchangeable between different brands because so much of it is AI written, but also with people increasingly searching on AI tools like ChatGPT, those tools want to take really clear messages to their human underlords to say, this is why you should buy this thing. Here's the reason. If your message isn't clear like that, these AI tools can really struggle to understand how to pitch you to their users. Now, I'll give you an example of one of our clients. I've talked about them loads. It's Ron from Golf Course Lawn Store. I've got a real soft spot for Ron and Golf Course Lawn Store because in many ways, they are an underdog in their industry. Ron runs an independent lawn care store selling lawn care products like fertilizers. He's going up against the likes of Amazon. So how do we market Ron to make sure he doesn't get crushed by those Goliaths? Well, this is where that one dominant strategic advantage comes through. What does Ron have that Amazon doesn't have? Well, Ron is an absolute knowledge beast about anything to do with lawn care. Ron's happy to say, look, I'm a monster, I've got incredible lawns, this is the fertilizer that you need to buy. Amazon isn't going to do that because Amazon makes money across everything. Whoever pays Amazon the most is going to be who Amazon recommends. So Ron's expertise, his personality, and his positioning through his YouTube videos really forms his competitive advantage and allows us to be really authoritative in our marketing. So when we're publishing a blog or a guide or a resource on his website, we can embed a YouTube video. We can embed those personal recommendations, those product recommendations, because Ron's expertise and personality comes through in everything that he does. So imagine the customer journey. You're online looking for fertilizer on Google. You see an Amazon page. You open that page. There's 369 billion different types of fertilizer, all with 3.8 stars. You've got no idea. You go to the next search result. It's an amazing blog post written by someone who has the most incredible lawn you've ever seen, eats, breathes, and sleeps lawn care. He talks about the exact issues that you're facing with your lawn. There's a video showing you how to resolve that issue. And then at the end, he says, do you know what? I've tested everything. This is the product to buy. And Ron beats Amazon. And by the way, this sort of expertise and authority positioning is fantastic for AI tools. They love taking authority recommendations to their users. So that's why Ron is killing it in AI overviews and ChatGPT recommendations as well. Okay, the fifth component is a correctly allocated marketing budget. Correctly makes it sound like there's only one right way of doing it, which isn't strictly correct, but there are many wrong ways of allocating your marketing budget. Two of the most common are, we've got 10 channels, 10% each. Or we've got 10 channels, but one of them's doing really well, 100% to that one. What we really like to see in a perfect digital marketing strategy is a marketing budget that is correctly unbalanced towards what's working now, whilst also keeping an eye on the future. We covered this recently in our video, how to plan your marketing budget, which you can see on the screen now. But broadly speaking, we want to make sure that 80% of your marketing budget is going on to the channels and the activities that are working really well now. But you also want to save 20% for experimentation, for play, for things that are new. Channels like AI search are rapidly increasing the amount of traffic they send our clients. We're seeing this growth trend increase every single month. A lot of our clients are doing really well in this space because they started investing in this area a year or even 2 years ago before this stuff was cool. It came from their 20% experimentation budget where we said, let's put some budget behind this, we know it's going to be a growth area, you can build an early advantage. The final step in our perfect marketing plan is measuring the right metrics and having that review cadence. Remember, our primary goal is ideally going to be something commercially focused like revenue. And we want to make that central to all our reporting and our measurement, because then we make our decisions based on what's moving the needle with revenue. But sometimes there will be secondary metrics or contributing metrics or leading indicator metrics that start to move before the revenue number moves. For example, traffic volume, impression share, keyword rankings. These things can all be useful indicators. You don't want to build your entire strategy around trying to improve your impression share, but if you can see your impression share improving, or you can see that you're getting keywords moving from position 100 plus up to 20 to 15 to 10 to 5, you know that you're moving in the right direction, even if that's not yet showing in the revenue or the lead numbers. Then of course it's about having a report and review cadence that means that you're continually learning and feeding back and making the right amount of changes. How we do this at Exposure Ninja is we have a monthly report cadence where we report to the clients the activities that have been carried out, our performance against annual targets, and some of these secondary performance metrics as well. Things like traffic, positions, AI visibility, that type of thing. These monthly reports allow us to see early indications of improvements. Then every quarter we have a more fundamental review of the activity and the performance called a quarterly campaign checkup, or QCC. In the QCC, we'll review our primary metric that we're going after, be that leads or revenue, against our annual target. This shows us how far away and are we on track. We'll then break results down by channel to see which channels are generating the growth and improvement. This then allows us to make changes based on enough data to be sure that it's a trend without being too reactive. Oh, we saw a slight organic drop this month, therefore we're going to put more budget there, or remove budget entirely. You don't want to make sort of whiplash changes like that, and we find that a quarterly cadence allows us to strike the right balance between being responsive without being overreactive. And this quarterly cadence is also the perfect time to review your strategy. It gives you a really good feedback loop. So our goal has been clearly defined. We've built a strategy to deliver that goal. The metrics that we're tracking show us whether the progress is real or superficial. The insights from that allow us to trigger strategic adjustments, and that then allows us to review our budget, our channels, and our tactics over time. By using this feedback loop every quarter, we make sure that we're always on track and pointing in the right direction. So the perfect marketing strategy then has one clearly defined commercial goal. It focuses on fixing the biggest constraint first, whether that's demand, conversion, sales, or retention. It's delivered through the channels that match the buyer behavior. Where do your people actually spend their time? It's often anchored on one dominant strategic competitive advantage. It's backed by an intentionally unbalanced budget with that 80-20 split between stuff that's working now and the experimental. And it's measured using goal-aligned metrics that make sure they track back to the commercial value we're trying to drive, and have an appropriate review cadence to always stay on track. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to request your free digital marketing review from the team at Exposure Ninja. It's free, but not everybody is eligible, so you need to go to exposureninja.com/review to apply for this today. Until next time, see you soon.